Hello everybody, this is Manu with another Eternal Brews video series. Today I wanted to bring you an update on the very first Eternal Brews video that we've done, Strangers, aka Stranger Danger. Because Strangers got a bunch of nice new toys with Omens of the Past, so I figured it's time to go back and revisit it and give the people that love our major tribe in Eternal an update on how their favorite tribe is doing and what I think is the best way to build them right now to give them the most competitive shot possible. Alright, so let's take a look. First of all, we have 34 units. We got a new 1-drop, which is both nice because having another 1-drop means more consistently curving out, and this is an almost all unit deck which mostly cares about putting as many efficient units in play as fast as possible and make them make each other be much above the curve. And getting a 1-drop that also brings additional stats with it is perfect. It's basically the flip side of Ruthless Stranger, affectionately named Hearty Stranger, which is a 1-2 or rather a 1-1 that gives all other strangers +0/+1, which is particularly helpful against cards like Lightning Storm, for example. You have all these 2-health strangers and a Hearty Stranger. The Lightning Storm, only the Hearty Stranger dies, saving a bunch of our units, and also allows our 2-drops to block opposing 1-drops without dying and so on. Ruthless Stranger is still there. Any stranger basically that gives additional stats is great, officially for cheap. Then in the 2-drop slot I decided to only play a few fixing strangers, simply because there are not many 2-drop stranger options. Like, let's look at it. I think there's only the Grim Stranger, if I'm not mistaken, in like terms of colored strangers. Yeah, exactly, there is Grim Stranger if we add all the colors, I think. Yeah, there's Grim Stranger and Hair Trigger Stranger, so both are Shadow. And both also don't add a ton. Like, the problem is Shadow really tears up the power base. Sure, like, we want to be blue and red for our 1-drops, and then we would need Shadow for our 3-drops, but we also definitely want to be time because the two most powerful strangers are in time, in Determined Stranger and the new Battle-Tested Stranger. So that would put a lot of strain on our power base, especially fixing the turn 2 Shadow without the 2-drop strangers, because otherwise you can't play. If you need one of these 2-drop like these color fixing strangers to fix your 2-drop like your Grim Stranger, then your Grim Stranger is not going to be a 2-drop, so that's awkward. Also, neither of the 2 strangers brings stats with it. Quick Draw is comparatively irrelevant. If you give your units flying, then there won't be a lot of blocking anyway, and even if, the Quick Draw is not going to matter as much. Grim Stranger gives some nice damage boost, but it doesn't give a stat boost, so it's just a vanilla 2-2 basically. And yeah, the problem is that I just think Shadow doesn't really add anything else, which is why I decided to not run them. Makes the deck run more smoothly and lets us focus on the more powerful cards, in my opinion. And here I chose, basically, I wanted this to fix the Force color, the Splash of Justice. So all of these are Justice, so that we barely need any actual Justice lands, like power cards. And then I chose one stranger to be Shadow, just to fix the Forsworn stranger, like have 4 outs plus the 4 Diplomatic Seal to get our Forsworn stranger to 5/5. So it's important to keep in mind that if you already have all the colors in hand, it's worth it to drop Diplomatic Seal on Shadow to make Forsworn Stranger a 5/5. Alternatively, we have Argenport Stranger for that, and Combrei Stranger is just the next best Stranger, since it fixes our 3rd color in time, because we don't really need our Strangers to provide Primal or Fire, because we are already like heavily focused on having enough Primal and Fire anyway. And the Combrei Stranger allows us to bring our time sources up to 16, which makes our 3 and 5 drop time cards pretty reliable. Like 16 sources is like above 90% consistency to play them on curve usually. Although Diplomatic Seal can be discounted a bit since it can't always provide influence in every situation, and it also might be needed for other influence colors occasionally. So having a bit more than the minimum requirement is good here. And alternatively, instead of running 2 more color fixing strangers as additional 2-drops, I decided to try to Reunite, which are pretty nice, like being able to get either like a Soaring Stranger when you just want to like get evasion and fly over the opponent's board to kill them, get a Swift Stranger to set up like a powerful tempo swing with charge, or just get more stats with Determined Stranger or Battle Tested Stranger depending on what fits your situation better in terms of power and curve. Can be really powerful, and the deck can get into stalls a fair share of the time, and then Reunite can break that wide open with more buffs or just flying. And at worst, it's like a weak 3-drop Stranger getting one of the 2 good 1-drops and making them cost 3, which is not great, but it's a nice way to use this on curve, like if you don't have a 3-drop, for example, and don't want to waste a lot of tempo on it. And also, yeah, there's only 2 because the card is still a bit clunky and slow for a mostly aggressive deck. Then we have the 3-drops, Determined Stranger, one of the best strangers, and Forsworn Stranger, another one of the best strangers, basically being like on average probably a 3-4, like a 3-3 to a 4-4, with the potential to be a 5-5, and that for 3, and also like Annihilate proof is pretty powerful. That's one of the like bigger swing plays if you play this on turn 3 as like a 4-4, with other strangers out already especially. Then we have for Soaring Stranger, flying is just amazing, especially on your entire team, and especially if you have ways to deal with cards like Titan. And enough buffs to ignore all the like small to medium-sized flyers in the game with most of your units. Then we have 2 Swift Strangers. Card doesn't really do anything in multiples. Charge can be quite powerful and generate a lot of momentum, but it can also just be fairly irrelevant in a stall if you can't attack, which is why there's only 2, and the Reunites can get them when they really shine. And they're also nice after sweepers, for example, or in general against control decks, to run them over just before they can take over or harsh roll us out of the game. And last but not least, the all-powerful battle-tested Stranger. Providing +2/+2 to all your units is just absurd. Turning your 2-drop color-fixing bears into 4/4s is just amazing, and that tops off the curve at 5. Then we have a couple support cards. Permafrost. Most notable here is the fact that I cut Torch. I initially tried Torch, and I realized that Permafrost just makes more sense, since a lot of the things that you can Torch are either not that important, or can also be permafrosted, but there's plenty of things that can be permafrosted but not torched, and there's not a lot of relic weapons that you really want to torch either. Sure, torch can go to the face, but the deck usually wins on board and wins big enough that you should rarely lose by like being a couple damages short, because if you're winning, you're gonna have a board with a bunch of strangers that just overwhelm your opponent basically, so Torch doesn't make that much of a difference there, and Permafrost allows us to deal with almost anything that could be a problem other than a Titan. Which brings me to Vanquish, 3 Vanquish, in addition to deal with Titan and also have more ways to deal with bigger units, because bigger units are the most likely candidates to stall out our strangers, especially when they're like medium sized and we don't have a million pump strangers out. So, and it's also very efficient. Getting rid of all these pesky big guys or like weaponed up units like a bladed up guy and stuff is really strong. As much here as in any other justice-based aggressive deck. Then we have to Protect. and 2 stand together. Protect is cheaper and more efficient at what it does. Allows us to protect our key strangers from blowouts like our Soaring stranger, so that the opponent cannot like kill it mid-combat and then block our smaller strangers for free with their ground guys that we expected to fly over, or just protect our key buff strangers from removal and silences, or even just keep our best guy around after a sweeper, say our Swift stranger, to live through a sweeper and then just drop a battle-tested stranger the next turn and hit the opponent for 9 to win the game and stuff like that. And then there's Stand Together, which basically has a similar purpose. It's more clunky, but it also has more powerful implications. It counters Harsh Roll and other similar effects. It allows us to counter Crystallize, and also another source of buffing our especially smaller strangers, and a bit of combat trick potential. Just a nice card to have in a super unit-centric deck like this that is otherwise pretty soft to sweepers. I decided to split these for the mentioned utility. I think that's pretty reasonable split that feels fairly good, because Stand Together is kind of situational and clunky. I would not recommend running more than 3, but I think 2 might be enough. If you really feel like there's a lot of Harsh Roll and you're having too much issues with 2 Protect and 2 Stand Together to beat them, I could see trying to fit a 3rd one, but that's about it. And then last but not least, we have 28 power. 28 is like the lower end amount that I think is reasonable to run with a deck that has 4 5-drops and 6 4-drops. Basically the Recano power base. Like 29 might be a bit more safer, but the problem is that since we are so heavy, so multi-color heavy, and having like our color fixes as well, we don't need as many power sources in terms of fixing our influence, and we don't have the option to run monuments like Recano does when they run like 29 power, for example. So 28 is like a pretty good compromise with the top end that we're having. And then just breaking down the power base real quick. The deck has 16 turn 1 blue and 16 turn 1 red for each 1-drop. Really sweet, makes them super reliable. You can almost always play them turn 1 if you have them. Like 85 to 90% I think is the chance to have turn 1 ready Primal or Fire. Then we also have the Diplomatic Seals, which are just great because they fix all our 4 colors and even can just turn on Forsworn Strangers 5th stat point if they have nothing better to do early on, because our colors are already fixed in our hand. And then we have 4 Combrei banners to fix our 3rd and 4th color, just with 1 land, like 1 power card. And we have a few seeds, few time seeds as additional time sources, bringing us up to 12 time producing power cards plus the 4 strangers, 16. For Justice we are at 4, 8, 16 as well, so extremely well fixed for a splash of mid-game situational cards. So it's like almost slightly overfixed, but can't really consider it overfixed. It's great to always be able to use your splash, so it's pretty perfect. Like the numbers are great. We have basically 16 on all colors. If there was another like reasonable to run blue-red land, I might consider running like a blue-red power card over one of the Combrei banners, since our time and justice are slightly more fixed than they need to be compared to our Primal and Fire, especially to our Primal. Like Fire, we actually we have like less Fire than time at this point since I cut the torches and cut down the Swift Strangers. I started with like 4, 4 and 4 torches, so the deck was like base blue-red, but we still want to be like heavy on the like ready red for the Ruthless Stranger. But yeah, there might actually be an argument to do this, to just go to like 17 Primal and 15 Fire, simply because we have 12 Primal cards, but only 6 Fire cards. So I think that makes sense. That makes the Ruthless Stranger slightly weaker turn 1, but overall makes sure that we have basically the most important color. And now that I think about it, because I would really not mind having a bit more than 16 Primal when Primal is so important, being one of our 1-drops, being one of our main ways to deal with annoying units, and also providing critical evasion. So we really want Primal, and really also want to avoid having to use Seal on Primal or Fire as often as possible to fix our other colors. Alright, yeah, the power base actually works out great, especially not having the 5th color other than for Forsworn Stranger, which is not mandatory, is a pretty big deal, and also only splashing the 4th color, since now we basically have all the best Strangers in Fire, Primal and Time, and then we just basically dip into Justice a bit for support, because Justice has just very good unit support cards. I considered Finest Hour. The problem is you can only run so many non-stranger cards after you fit all the good strangers. Also the card is a bit situational, like the deck can easily just hang back a bit, start building up the board, especially with some Reunites, to get into situations where the Finest Hour is not that needed. And also Finest Hour would tax our splash a lot more and leave us more often in situations with cards that we cannot use because we lack the influence, and hurts consistency quite a bunch, which is why I decided against it and just went with a few protects, which are often a little less dependent on being needed in just that specific spot, in the sense that the opponent will always like try to deal with key strangers, while Finest Hour, once the board is like a bit gummed up, quickly loses value. It's often only a small window where Finest Hour keeps us attacking and helps us keep the board open or break it open again, while once the board is significantly stalled out, a Finest Hour will still not give us any meaningful attacks, basically. Alright, that's it for the deck list. Hope you guys like it. I think it looks really sweet and like a really comes together really nice with all the new strangers and ups the power level a lot. Basically, if our strangers live, the deck is brutally powerful with like battle tested stranger alone. Also the durability Hearty stranger adds early on to get us into a better spot to keep attacking early on against smaller units that otherwise would keep us from attacking, like Amber Acolytes and all that stuff that you don't want to attack into, but the extra point of health allows us to attack into now, and so on. And also having another 1-drop makes all these determined strangers and battle-tested strangers that we drop later on so much more powerful right away, because we have more units. And also makes them more durable, because battle-tested stranger being a 4-5 instead of a 4-4 is a big deal and a major difference. Alright, that's the deck list. As usual, we're gonna hop into some games, show it in action, see how far we're gonna get with the Stranger Danger. Don't expect too much. The deck is not hyper competitive, it's just something cool and fun to do, and a bit different for people that enjoy this tribe and wanna at least do their best effort at winning while playing their favorite tribe, rather than just losing all the time, because even if you enjoy a tribe, it might not be too enjoyable to lose all the time. So I hope I can help with that a bit. Stay tuned for the first half of the games coming up in a moment. Thanks for watching.